Chapter 1137, more lore, more reveals, and it feels great. Some of it even makes me feel vindicated, proven right, which just makes things 10 times better. Who doesn't like being proven right? And on top of that, even though one was expected, there isn't going to be a break next week, so it's going to be 3 in a row for the first time since October, so that's nice, starting the new year strong. There was even an original short released on the official One Piece YouTube channel, which takes place after the raid on Onigashima in Wano, which was really well done. It makes me miss the anime even more, but we are over halfway through the break now, so that's a positive. But anyway, 1137. The cover story, I didn't mention this last week, but I feel like it is relevant. Remember the German cover story and how it shifted to focusing on Vegapunk's past, which directly tied into the current ongoings in the manga at the time? I think there is a possibility something similar may be happening very soon with the Yamato cover story. Last chapter, or I guess in general recently, there's been a lot of focus on the sun god, what with being in elbaf and everything, and last chapter was the juiciest of the bunch with some information that changes the entire course of the story, history, and the One Piece world, going way further back than even the Void Century. So there's a lot of sun god stuff, and last chapter Hold'em led Yamato and Co to a mysterious hidden base that has a giant version of Who's Who's helmet on the top of it, and Who's Who's historically known for one thing and one thing only, and that's his connection to the gum gum fruit or the nika fruit, from Shanks stealing it to Luffy eating it to his imprisonment because he lost it and hearing about nika while in prison, and Luffy becoming nika in Wano, and now he's being brought back into the story, unless it turns out he's actually dead and this is some kind of cult founded by his cat followers or someone. If he's re-entering the story, there may be some small details revealed about the sun god in this cover story through him that may be relevant to the current plot on elbaf, although the only hole in this idea is that I have no clue how kidnapping civilians factors into this. Why would Who's Who be kidnapping random people, and how does that link to the sun god? I don't know. And one more thing before really getting into this week's chapter, the scanned translations from last chapter had some noticeable differences from the official. The first is to do with Usopp telling the story of Oz. From the scans it seemed like he was the one saying Oz was a legendary warrior to the giants, and I did think that something was off because for one, the speech bubble was separate to the rest of Usopp's words, and second, this is new information to us, so it makes sense that in the official it was just a random giant who said it. The scans also has Yarul saying Loki's desire to be the sun god played a big role in him killing his father, but in the official he says both Loki and Harald are the results of attempting to be Nika, so Loki's motive to kill Harald isn't explicitly stated in the official like it was in the scans, and there was no mention of Harald trying to be the sun god in the scans either. So with that, if Harald's pacifism was in part due to him wanting to be Nika, then I think that adds to the train of thought that the true nature of Nika is purely up to interpretation, where some view him as a destroyer and some as a liberator. Harald, assuming that he was truly in fact a good king, probably thought his work of trying to shed Elbaf's connection to war was liberating his people, opening them up to the world. That was his form of liberation. The official also tells us it was Harald himself who prophesied his death at the hands of his son, which adds another wrinkle to their whole dynamic, since him still allowing Loki to live and raising him paints him to be a good man, not a bad person. It was also Loki himself who killed the Horse of Fortune, so no matter who the villain actually is in this situation, Loki isn't free of blame regardless. So this is why you should read the official. Even if you do read the scans, the translation makes all the difference. Now, the chapter opens with the trio who are making their way into the castle to retrieve the key to Loki's chains, and the castle is completely abandoned, so it looks like the job of the guards from a few chapters ago was to guard the castle, to patrol it as part of their duties. I guess no one is allowed into the castle now except for them, since it's their job. But also, if a high-ranking giant like Yarul or Dorian Broggy wanted to enter, then no one would say that they aren't allowed to. And it's been 14 years since King Harald's death, meaning Loki was 49 years old when he killed his father, and converting that to human years, estimating of course, he would have only been 16 or 17 years old when he did it, so that was stupidly young. But not only that, he told Luffy that he has been imprisoned for 6 years, so if he left the country right after becoming a kin and Kingslayer, that means he was at sea for 8 years. That's plenty of time for him to have made his name causing chaos for so long. It makes me wonder who he might have come across, like any admirals. Did he cross paths with Whitebeard at all, Kaido or Big Mom? Again, that's assuming he was at sea all those years and he wasn't doing anything in between, because 8 years is a very long time. Did the Lola thing happen within these 8 years? Because we know right after she rejected Loki, she went out to sea to find her own husband, so it couldn't have happened before Harald's death, because 14 years ago she was a kid. So I can understand imagine Loki meeting her on his travels. The only thing is that I'm trying to understand how the giants would have felt about this, because if it's after Harald's death, they would hate Loki, but we see them celebrating in this picture. So my thinking is that they were happy, one, because it would mean Loki is no longer their issue, and two, which is the bigger reason, it would mean overcoming their hatred for Big Mom. So they would be celebrating because this is what Harald himself would have wanted, to make peace. The front door is broken from the inside, so that would have been the two holy knights leaving to go find Loki, and this castle is more like a graveyard. Giant bones everywhere from when Loki killed Harald, so this was a huge event. Well, obviously it was a huge event because the king was killed, but I mean, this was a massive fight. After last chapter, I thought the situation on the day of the incident only included the three of Jarl, Loki and Harald, where Jarl was maybe trying to mediate an argument between the two of them, which escalated to where Loki went to kill Harald, and after that, after Jarl got the sword through his helmet and the king was killed, then Loki fought the other giants outside the castle before heading out to sea. But no, this whole thing happened within its walls. I guess it still could have been only Jarl, Loki and Harald there to begin with, and the rest of the giants only rushed in after hearing the commotion. There's still a lot of different ways that this could have gone down, a lot of missing context, and it turns out I was right from last chapter where I assumed Harald was a powerful fighter himself, a great warrior. We see that with the castle being in complete ruins from the battle on the day that Loki killed Harald and Loki, but also he says many soldiers were in the castle that day. So I wonder how all that went down, because I doubt the giants would have just watched Loki kill their king. We know Jarl tried to intervene, but what about the rest of them? Or did Harald forbid them from getting involved because of honor or something? Or was it just a massive 1 versus 100 brawl? I mean, it's still unclear. Again, different translations paint a different picture, but I do hope they had a one-on-one fight, because that would be so cool. There's some differences between the two scans where one calls Harald the greatest king while the other one calls him the strongest king. If the one calling him the strongest is the more accurate translation, then that just makes me hope that the one-on-one fight happened even more. He says that God stood ready to kill Loki, so does that mean they were ready to kill Loki after he killed the king, or does it mean that they were anticipating he would do it beforehand, so they were preparing for a fight? And it's also crazy how Loki and Jarl were the only survivors as well, and no wonder Harald's philosophy is so popular in the present day. It's because 100 warriors died on that day, and some of these skeletons are adorned with horns, so those kids from a few chapters ago did indeed also have real horns growing out of their heads, and this is because giants have ancient giants blood running through their veins, so that is confirmation that the two species are related. This is the vindication I was talking about. I've brought up ancient giants in pretty much every chapter recently, even before that chapter with the giant kids with the horns, to the point where I was sounding like a broken record, but it wasn't for nothing. The Oz stuff from last chapter and this blood reveal from this chapter makes me very happy, and I know that Road says no pure-blooded ancient giants are alive today, but the fact that he said that, my hopes are now moving to the possibility that there are ancient giants still alive on Elbaf somewhere, and they will make an appearance. And this also kind of confirms for me that Onis like Kaido have also got ancient giants blood in them. So the tree is like this. You have the ancient giants at the top, and from that race came the regular giants and the Onis, and from the regular giants came the buccaneers after them. That's how each of these species came to be, and they're all connected. Harald also had a set of horns of his own, but he broke them off because of his hatred of violence. It was more symbolic, since those horns were synonymous with the ancient giants. We finally get a good look at him. This painting we saw a glimpse of before is now in full view, and Harald definitely does not look like a pacifist. He's bald and has two really deep scars from where he tore out his own horns, and from the looks of it, he didn't just break off the pointed ends, he ripped them out from the roots, so he was resolute. He has a big mustache and spiked beard, and also two lines running down his face, tattoos similar to Ripley's. I'll be honest though, it's his eyes that stand out, because those don't look like the eyes of a peaceful man, those eyes look fierce. And speaking of Onis and ancient giants, he bears a striking resemblance to Kaido. His beard, his frown, his scaly sort of chest plate or shirt that looks like Kaido's tattoos. I would be so happy if Kaido was to play a role in this arc, even if only in a flashback. I think Kaido is a great character personally, and I'd love to see him again in the story in any capacity. I was expecting him to look kind of joyful from what we'd learned about him, but no, it looks like he meant business all day every day. Even Luffy thinks he looks strong, and since the giants called him a great warrior, that means he did use his strength in the past for something. And I do want to see that in the eventual flashback we get. Next we get some more details about the royal family. Loki, who is currently 63 years old, Hirudin, who is currently 81 years old, and who hates Loki more than anyone, and it's not hard to see why. They are only half brothers. Harald is father to both of them, but they have different mothers, and Hirudin couldn't be the queen of Elbaf. Harald was with her first, Hirudin's mother, before he got with Loki's mother, the queen of Elbaf. And the reason she couldn't become the queen was because she wasn't from Elbaf. She was born from another giant tribe, and many in the country looked down on her because they wanted to preserve the bloodline. Now this is another new thing that I really want to be expanded upon. How many giant tribes are there in the world? We know Soul is from one of these tribes. Do they ever interact with each other? How did Hirudin's mother get to Elbaf? Maybe the king went on one of his voyages trying to connect Elbaf to the rest of the world, and he came across her like that. He found one of those other giant tribes, and Hirudin's mother came back with him. That's the only thing I can think of. Also, is she still alive? Because we know the queen's dead, Harald's dead, and I don't really know how old she would be if she was still breathing. Maybe a bit older than Dory and Broggy. Maybe she's like near 200. Is she still even on Elbaf, or was she sent back to her original tribe? Hirudin was allowed to stay, and because of that I'm sure she would have been allowed to as well. Given Harald's beliefs and everything, surely he would have let her stay. They say she was looked down upon and mistreated, and Hirudin himself was also bullied in the past, so who knows, maybe she still is on the island but in an isolated location. I also think it's possible that Hirudin in part blames Loki for the way he and his mother were treated, I guess. Like, Loki was given all that they couldn't have, and look at what he did with it. Terrorized his people, killed his father, Hirudin's father. The hate is more than justified. And we do get the backstory with Hirudin and Road. If you remember, actually Road was born around the same time as Loki when Big Mom was in the country, and Hirudin was already a kid. Goldberg, this guy, the cook of the New Giant Pirates crew, was also born around that time. So it makes sense that Hirudin and Road would have known each other for almost their entire lives, and Hirudin was bullied for not being of pure elbaf blood. And let me ask, did Harald neglect both of his sons? Was he too busy trying to vie for peace that he let one of them get bullied and humiliated while he let the other one destroy his people's homes? Anyway, Road was also bullied for being Road, which tracks, but he became Hirudin's friend after Hirudin noticed his skill in cartography, map making. I guess Hirudin couldn't have known how Road would have turned out in the future, and his dream is also reaffirmed. It's not just to be the king of Elbaf, but to unite all of the giant tribes under him and be the king of them all. And with all of this context of how he was insulted and humiliated but withstood it, his declaration back in Dressrosa makes a whole lot more sense. And back in the present, I really like Zoro's reaction to Road talking about his past and his dedication to Hirudin. Like, he's heard it all before from King in Wano as well, but more importantly from himself. He shares that same feeling but with Luffy, therefore it's nothing new to him. Luffy spots the giant guards on the floor, although we don't see them. So this is how they'll get caught up on the situation with the Holy Knights and Loki and all of that. Who knows if the key is even still in the castle at this point, since those two members are already in the underworld at Loki's location. So now to the underworld, Gunko is attacking Loki and some of the other giant animals around using the power of her arrow fruit. So these arrows show the direction that her attacks will follow. So to me, it's like how there are upgraded forms of other devil fruits: Kuzan's ice and Monet's snow, Akainu's magma, and Ace or Sabo's fire. This fruit is like the better version of Vanderdecken's fruit, where he never misses his target, or at least that's how I'm interpreting it. Also, she's doing all this while Loki is still tied up, who's all bloodied up, and Loki uses future sight to predict her next attacks. He does this after taking a beating already. And Gunko's celestial dragon ego is definitely getting in the way, because if I was her, I wouldn't be actively pissing off a giant who took on his entire country, a country that the world government themselves can't control, and who needed an emperor of the sea to subdue him. But that's just me. I don't think Sea Stone directly affects Haki, but since Loki is a devil fruit user, his Haki would be weakened by extension, so him managing to use his future sight in that state is crazy, although he does pass out soon after. But before he does, and to no one's surprise, he's still refusing to join, and I mean, who would want to become a celestial dragon, not including the physical embodiment of greed? Gunko still spouting celestial dragon propaganda while attacking Loki just as he predicted, and the way she uses her arrows is a lot more versatile than I would have expected. Walking on them, creating giant boots and gauntlets, this ability has some range to it. And now the moment that we've all been waiting for. It's been in the making for I don't know how many years, since this guy first met fight with the five elders, although that still isn't even confirmed yet, and from it came one of the most well-known agendas in the entire community, but one that now has to be finally put to rest because this other member of the Holy Knights currently on elbaf has been revealed to be called Figarland Shamrock, son of one of the five elders, Saint Figarland Garling, with no scar on his face and long luscious hair. This is not Shanks, it is now official. He looks really cool. His armor looks very similar to what we saw Garling wearing during the Kuma backstory. He also has two arms, that's very important, and a sword. Most likely it's going to be a famous one of the excellent or supreme grade blades. By the way, Tashigi's dream of collecting all of them is not happening. There's no chance. That's arguably harder than finding the One Piece. So the first thing that comes to mind for me when I hear the name Shamrock is Ken Shamrock, MMA fighter. I know him best from his time in the WWE. I mean, I'm not old enough to have watched him when he was there, but I've seen clips. I know that some other characters in One Piece inspired by wrestlers, but that's the only connection I've got. I like how his name is similar in a way to Shanks. Shamrock and Shanks, maybe the same kanji is used for the first part of each name. So again, although still unconfirmed, it was surely this guy who met with the elders back then. And that brings up the question of which pirate was he talking about, because now that we know that Loki did go out to sea, then surely it is Loki. He told the world government about Loki, and that's why he's here now to do business. And their business is to bring elbaf under the umbrella of the world government, so I guess make it an affiliated nation by force. Well, they can try, but we know that's not happening. The world government's obsession with giants is very unhealthy, to the point where they were trying to create artificial ones with the kids on Punk Hazard, and now that piece of information makes King Harald look suspicious all over again to me. What if this was his goal? This is what he was working towards, that he wanted to get elbaf officially recognized, and Loki found out about it, which is why he killed him. The thing is that most of the information points to Harald being a good person, but there's little cracks showing here and there, like this world government affiliation thing that seems like, based on what we know about him so far, seems like something that he would have done. The pacifist thing, until we get the full picture, will remain suspicious. I don't know when we're gonna get this flashback and how much it's gonna cover. Like, will it cover the whole of Harald's life as well as all of Loki's life, or will it just be Loki's life? The whole Lola situation hasn't even been addressed. Maybe Nami will bring it up when they reach him, and after the possible fight against the Holy Knights is done. I wonder if he'll be pissed off hearing her name, or if he'll be sad, who knows. That was the only thing we knew about him for so long, and the image we had of him back then was a far cry compared to how insane he actually is. And back to Harald, maybe he was just that naive where he thought the world government and the world would be accepting of him and elbaf, which is why he did potentially try to affiliate them with the world government before Loki stopped him and killed him. What if it was just as simple as Loki thought Harald was too weak-minded to rule elbaf, so he took matters into his own hands? Apart from Loki, Harald is by far the character, or just the specific part of this arc in general, that I am the most interested in, because there's enough information to form an image in my mind, but that picture may be completely wrong and the alternative picture is just as interesting. And I think we are headed to that big Holy Knights fight I've been mentioning. It won't happen next chapter. I think next chapter the trio will either find the key to Loki's chains, or they'll find out via one of the giant guards who will be half dead on the floor that the island has intruders who took the key themselves, and are after Loki. The chapter after that will end with the trio arriving at Loki's location. At the base of the tree, we'll get an epic face-off with the Holy Knights on one side, Luffy Zoro Nami on the other side with Loki in the middle. Luffy will notice Shamrock, who looks like Shanks, but he'll know that it isn't him, and the fight will begin in the chapter after that. So 3 chapters to go. I'm being as idealistic as I can, but that sounds about right. I've said that it is possible that the Holy Knights retreat, so let's hope that they do so after the fight, because I want to see if Shamrock's strength is at all comparable to the level of power of his long lost brother.